Hello and welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the Angelic Footprints podcast. Today, I have a very special guest. Her name is Linda Eastburn. Now, Linda is an entrepreneur, author, real estate investor, and intuitive. She is the author of get that right, four books, the latest being SPI, Your Way to Power and Success, and it's about living life intuitively. She has lectured at universities and medical institutions across the USA on her 30 years as a health intuitive. She has combined a world of business with the spiritual world of intuition to teach others an easier way to manifest life. I absolutely love that, Linda. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, yes. And thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate that. This is just a fabulous platform, I think. I've been listening to a few of the stories of angels, and it's just wonderful. But yeah, a little bit about me. I started my life out as a real estate investor, and I still do real estate investing. That's kind of my bread and butter, of course. But somewhere along the way, about 30 years ago, I decided that, a spiritual path was kind of missing from my life. And I'd always been a rather spiritual person, so I really wanted to expand a little more on that. So I started some classes in meditation and doing some focus and concentration, deeper levels of meditation, and just reading a lot about wonderful spiritual experiences that other people had. And I found that my world was beginning to open up to some of those things. And it was in the pursuit of all of that that I had this kind of spontaneous experience, angelic experience that completely changed the trajectory of my life. And that was what drew me to your channel because it is all about that angelical voice that guides us sometimes during down paths that we had no intention of going down, but we end up going down them anyway because it's sort of our fate or our destiny to be drawn to in that direction. So that's kind of my background.
I love that, Linda. And, Spirit has a way of just knocking on the door saying, hello, are you ready for this journey? And if you don't listen, they'll knock again and they'll keep knocking and they're very, very persistent. So I'm really glad that you trusted the intuition and the guidance that was given to you. But Linda, I'm very intrigued to hear a little bit more about this angelic experience of yours, as I'm sure are our listeners. Would you like to share that with us, please?
I would love to share that. It was very profound for me as well as the person I was with at the time that it happened. So I've been taking these classes on meditation and getting deeper into those classes. And part of our assignment was to ask a question before meditation and listen for an answer. And as you know, sometimes that intuitive answer can be very evasive. You don't know if you can trust it or not. You don't know for sure if it's accurate or not. But I was learning how to trust that voice, learning how to trust those messages. But I didn't feel very proficient with it at that point. And I had had a health intuitive session some time back, and it was very accurate. But I had absolutely no intention whatsoever of ever being a health intuitive because I knew nothing about the human body. I knew nothing about health means. I just felt like it would be a dangerous pursuit for me to go down an avenue that was not necessarily something I felt proficient with consciously. But I had a small store that had books and antiques and things like that, and it was in a quaint little Victorian town, just a really wonderful little precious place. And I also did small little intuitive sessions and in this little store. And one day I got a call from a woman. I never met her before, and she had some intuitive questions she wanted to ask me. So we set up a session on a Sunday afternoon, after the store had actually closed. Before she got there, it was interesting because I had a little decorative area kind of in the back of the store with some nice little angels and a little crystal ball and, some things like that, just some small decorative crystals and things on the table. And this night, because the store was closed, I was going to do this session in the front of the store on a larger table. So as I passed by that small little decorative grouping in the back, I noticed a little crystal ball, and it was about the size of the palm of my hand. I picked it up and I took it to the table where we would be doing the session. I had no idea why I was doing that. It was just one of those impressions, and I just followed through. I thought, well, this will be a nice little accent on the table. She arrived and she had various questions. None of them had to do with health. They were just, various questions that she had. And I went through my normal little struggle to get those intuitive answers for her and, work through that process. And it was just quite normal. And at the end of the session, now this is where the angelic angels came in. She asked me if I could get in touch with her guardian angel. And I thought, well, I have never tried to do that before, but, you know, I will try. I will just give that a try and we'll see what comes in. Now, I use a method because I was well versed in hypnosis and meditation. I use a method where I would just go into kind of a deep trance state and just allow those answers to come to me. So, as I went into that deep trance state, I just asked for her guardian angels if they would to please be with me. But just before I did that, there was something else I did, and this is really the a kind of remarkable moment. I looked down, I saw that small crystal ball on the table. I picked it up and I put it between the palm of both hands, and there was a sensation that ran up both arms and into my heart. And suddenly, my heart just opened up with this deepest sense of love and compassion, deeper sense of compassion than I have ever felt before in my life. And I didn't even know this woman. She was a complete stranger to me. There was no reason for this depth of compassion to be coming over me at that moment, but it did anyway. At that time, I went into this dialogue of advice for her, and it was all health related. Now, she was in her 40s. She looked very healthy, very attractive woman. She was very, much at peace. She didn't seem to have an illness of any sort. I didn't know her background in this regard. But everything that was coming through had to do with her health and what she needed to do for herself and the self-care she needed. It was just just about 15 minutes of advice for her, all dealing with self-care, self-love, and dealing with how her body was responding to the lifestyle she was living and the things that she was doing to harm herself. Well, when I came out of the session, both she and I we're like, "Okay, where did that come from?" Because it wasn't like the beginning, it wasn't the struggle kind of trying to get answers for her that had happened in the beginning. It was just a remarkable piece of information that I couldn't get the words out fast enough. They were just coming, just rapid fire, just, the words were just flowing, and it wasn't like it was even me. It was like there was just this wonderful, loving, caring voice coming through me for her. And at that point, of course, I had to rethink the idea of being health intuitive because I recognized that wherever this information came from, it didn't come from my conscious knowing. It didn't come from that place. It came from someplace in my heart that connected with that angelic realm that had the information already. And I was just a voice piece for it to come through. So it did come through. And at that point, I just decided, and this is where it changed the trajectory of my life. I decided, okay, I will pursue the idea of being a health intuitive. What I did recognize is I had to have some kind of a mental structure in order to do that because it wasn't like every single health intuitive session had that much of a profound easiness of coming through. So as I began to practice, I devised a way where I could take a silhouette of their body and just go from the top of their head to the tips of their toes. And along the way in that scan, there would be places that I felt compelled to stop and to look deeper into the elements of their system and just describe what I could see there. I couldn't diagnose anything. I'm not a medical doctor, but I could describe what I see there and then get the mind body relationship issues that might exist within that area, maybe a beginning point of where this began and how they could maybe move past it. Also, if there was any real devastating health issue, of course, to get them to a regular physician that could verify that, because we know it's not always 100% accurate, to verify that and to get the help they need for healing beyond that. Then I would, with each of those areas, I would scan farther down the body. And if there was another place I felt like stopping, then I would do that as well and then proceed on. And what I found was this became my niche. This became the area where I could help people, where the angelic messages could come forward in a helpful way for people to understand not only their body, mind, spirit, but also to get the physical and emotional needs sometimes that they required. So I went on from there and started the International Academy of Intuitive Arts, created a health intuitive course teaching so many people, doctors, nurses, people in the field of health. That's where I taught or where I lectured at many of the universities and medical institutions across the country. But more often, I ended up at spiritual centers, places
Yeah.
where people were looking for ways to connect, and I just began teaching people how to do some of the remarkable things that had come my way very naturally for me and was guided so much in doing so. So that's kind of my background and how all of that angelic energy began to have a voice through me and change my entire life.
Oh, Linda, I'm absolutely flabbergasted. I mean, it's such an amazing story. And I had the whole goosebumps thing happening as you were telling that story. And I love the way that you really listened to the voice of the angels, the voice of spirit to take you onto the next step and how you're able to help people and, even helping professionals in the field to trust their intuition in terms of, when they're working with their own patients. I think it's absolutely amazing. So you're obviously meant to be here to pass on these kind of messages. And I thank you for everybody that you're helping. I just think we need more of that, that really genuine, authentic message that people can really do something positive with. And it's another reason why I love having guests on the show because you're telling people about this, that this is real. So thank you so much. You've already touched on how this has influenced your life. Would you like to add a little bit more about that? I mean, obviously, you've built a very successful business, you've built an academy. Is there more that you can share with us, please?
Yes. Well, just in different ways that this has guided my life. In 2013, my mother had a stroke. She was 89 at the time, almost 90. And at the time that she had the stroke, she was paralyzed on her left side of her body, or very, very little ability. So she came to live with me for a short time. And my mother and father grew up or lived on a farm where I grew up. And they both wanted to remain the latter days of their life on that farm that was very comfortable and very secure for them. So at that time, I ended the Academy of Intuitive Arts and my intuitive work pretty much at that time to care for my parents. Now, this was a remarkable thing too, and very selfless, but it was something that they both wanted to stay home rather than to go into nursing facilities. So I decided, okay, they had a little savings, I had a little savings. I knew real estate, I had some real estate investments, but I needed some guidance on how I could create enough income to be able to support 24/7 care at their home. Now, I helped out a great deal of the time, but we still needed professionals to be able to be there and move them and, do things. And during that period of time, my dad developed a brain tumor, so he needed also help until he went on hospice and passed in 2015. My mother passed in 2017. But during that period of time, I had to create an income. Now, this is where, just trusting that inner voice because it was a make or break moment. Either I could do it or I couldn't do it, but I really believed that the forces would be there with me. There again, it was a completely selfless moment. So the only way I knew how to generate the astronomical cost of 24/7 nursing care was to purchase rental properties and to be able to generate enough money to do so. I knew what I had to do. I knew the number I had to create to manifest. And suddenly I was just intuitively guided to the places to purchase. I was making offers on these properties that were ready to rent and really decent small little homes, but still decent to rent. And I was making offers way beneath the market value, and they were saying, "Sure, let's do it." And I was buying those. Within a short 6 months, I had purchased something like, 12, 15 properties that covered all of those expenses, and it covered everything we needed in a rapid period of time. And, there again, it was a totally selfless moment, where the universe came together and the angelical forces guided me to the places I needed to purchase. And we were able to accomplish that. Now that's trust. And that's also, just knowing. I mean, I understand I already knew real estate investing. That was a knowledge base I consciously had. But I also knew real estate investing, and you don't find that many properties at those values that quickly, on the planet. So that was also just a really wonderful guiding energy that helped both myself, my parents, my entire family, and it was just a blessing all the way around.
You just reinforced for me that wonderful guidance that you received, and that when we trust, and as you said, you did it selflessly, you did it for the intent of helping your family. And you trusted and they came through, and most of all, you followed their guidance, which is amazing because how often do we get messages? And I'm sure our listeners would agree that they get messages and the logical brain comes in and they say, "Oh, no, 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 can't do that." And then they wonder why they don't get the results that perhaps that they could have got. And I think it's just amazing that has turned out the way that it has for you. It's a beautiful story. And again, thank you for sharing our listeners and reinforcing that when we trust the spirit world, when we trust our angelic guides, that we can have those results. And that's just amazing on its own. Linda, tell us a little bit about, I know you've mentioned a book that you've got. Is there anything that you would like to share with our listeners in terms of the work that you do? And maybe if listeners are interested in getting in touch with you, how might they be able to do that?
Yes, actually, the motivation for the book, "Spy Your Way to Power and Success," and it's really about superpowered insight, is what the spy is about. Which is intuition, like kind of on steroids, where you can know things like I have in my life, how it's guided me, how it's led me to places and people and events that has just super blessed my life. So the book is about teaching other people or helping other people to be able to establish that kind of inner connection with the angelic realm, with that messenger from the universe that's all knowing. It's really a profound way to it's a human development program that I've created, and I'm no longer doing the Academy of Intuitive Arts, but I am doing, a workshop, and I'm and a long course as well. Some people don't wanna devote themselves to a few years of study, but a lot of people can do a quick start with just a workshop, and I do have a virtual workshop coming up on, the 15th of no, it's not the 15th, it's on the 29th of August. I'm not sure if this will be out by then, but the 29th of August of 2025, I have a virtual workshop that's a 3-day workshop. But I do those periodically, and people can always get in touch with me by just lindaeastburn@gmail.com. I'm on Facebook. Many people find me through Facebook, Linda Eastburn. And also, you can go to my website, which is kind of a long title, but it's Linda Eastburn at Linda Eastburn Spy, S period P period I period. But you can find me there as well. So, yes, I love to talk with people. I also do personal sessions, helping people find their way. If you haven't quite gotten there yet yourself to be able to get those messages, which I know you do as well, sometimes they just need a little help, and I'm happy to do that as well.
Linda, thank you. And I was wondering what SPY stood for. So, super power intuition. I absolutely love that. Thank you. It's a great way of helping people recognize also that, what we do is sometimes people call it a gift. I don't know if I'd call it a gift because I believe that everybody has it. But to really
Right.
make it a superpower, that does take some practice. It does take some learning and some skill. So, if any of you listeners out there listening to this show today are interested in cultivating that superpower intuition, then please do get in touch with Linda. And I'm so glad that you said that you run those workshops periodically because, as we
Mhm.
know, not everybody is instantly either ready or able to jump into a workshop the first time that they hear about it. So please jump onto Linda's Facebook page or Linda's website so that you can see when those next workshops are on. Linda, thank you so much for being here. Are there any additional last thoughts that you would like to share with our listeners?
Well, I think it's, to encourage people to just begin somewhere. We're all kind of programmed to believe that these kind of miracles don't exist, but I've lived a life rich with miracles, and I do believe everyone has the capacity to do this. But you have to kind of step out of those restricted, limited boxes and be able to start somewhere. And I was almost 40 before I began my journey doing this, so it can happen at any point in time in your life. where you step out and begin to receive those messages, and they are abundant once you begin that process.
They are indeed, and thank you for those messages. Yeah, it's never too late to start. If you didn't start before, start now. Absolutely. Linda,
Yes.
thank you so much for your lovely messages. Thank you for being a guest on the show. It's been such a pleasure having you here. In the meantime, for all of our listeners, if you found this episode valuable, please share information about the show with 3 people who you believe would find it beneficial. If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a 5-star review on the platform where you are listening. Until the next episode, blessings, and may your life be filled with hope and inspiration.